Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Greatness Engineering Hour show. Today, we're going to the US and we're going to have someone that we had 2 years ago. Started the show. I was like, oh, okay, I've been doing this for quite a long time. And so we'll have Charmaine Carter. You probably remember her. Her episode back then was very confronting. She was talking about abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, all kind of violence that they went through, and she managed to get out of it. And she's back. She's back because she has a new book, and we really want to know about this new novel and how it came about to be to be birth, because that's the process is really the most important thing here. Just to remind you a little bit about Charmaine. So Charmaine she's the CEO and president of Carter Entertainment, and she started a podcast a few months ago, which is doing really well. She's having an impact on so many survivors of violence and abuse, and it's called Survivors of the Lion's Den, and she'll have the opportunity to explain it to us. And just in a nutshell, about Charmaine, she is a child abuse survivor, as mentioned before, and she is an inspiring speaker. And you'll get to judge by yourself when we have our conversation today. She's a writer. She's an activist. So after what she went through, she's now using her experience to help other people to recover and guide them, and also create awareness, because that's the key important point here. And she's also now a podcaster, and she's a woman of God. And I think it has been something very important in her recovery, and for her to be a survivor after what she went through. So let me know where you're watching from, and please participate, ask questions. We're gonna focus our conversation on an important subject, which is, how do you find your voice and your place after the abuse? And the book that Charmaine have written is talking about that. It's a story about recovering after the abuse. So don't get your pen and paper as usual to make notes and to learn from Charmaine. And I really want you to listen and to be part, to participate actively, because she has a strong message, and this message needs to go out of this platform to the masses. So thanks for being here. If you're already here, let us know where you're watching from, and then we're gonna start the conversation with Charmaine. And I know that, as usual, it's going to be an amazing conversation, an inspiring conversation, as it was the first time. So let's, get ready. Charmaine is coming. Another episode of the Greatness Engineering Hour show, the show that is brought to you by the Birai Telekima Global Leadership Organization.
Real is important is if you just look at the word compassion, when it's behavior, it's something that can be learned, and it is something that we can embody through habits and through our daily actions.
To get this idea that if we interject this wisdom intentionally, I call them needle movers. It's the needle mover that's missing.
Don't deprive the world of your greatness. Please. Don't do that anymore. Dare to excel, dare to be sexy, dare to be you, dare to be the best version of yourself. Impact yourself positively, and from there impact others. And you are not alone.
welcome back, Charmaine, to the Greatness Engineering Hour show. It's been 2 years, and
Yes.
I'm really happy to have you back to know exactly how things have gone for you, but most importantly, to know about your new project, this new novel that is coming out and linked to the work and the advocacy that you're doing. Just to, before we start the conversation, can you please reintroduce yourself to the audience? Let us know who you are,
Sure.
any
Um, my
particular
name.
point that you want us to focus on as far as your journey is concerned.
Okay. So my name is Charmaine Carter, as she just said, and I am a childhood survivor of sexual and physical abuse. I have been through a lot in my life at the hands of my family members, and writing was my only real escape as a child. I would write on anything I get my hands on, just so I can get the emotions out, because I wasn't allowed to talk about it. I had so I started writing, and I continued writing, and I'm still writing at the age of 53. I'm never going to stop writing. Um, I became I got help from the abuse that I suffered from. Then I got inspired to help others because I saw so many people still suffering from childhood abuse, whether it was sexual or physical or emotional. People are still being abused on a daily basis, and it bothered me. So I became an activist. My first thing I did was I did a newsletter when I was in, my early 30s. I did newsletters to the inner city community, talking about domestic violence, abuse, drug addictions that kind of fall hand in hand with the abuse. I went to writing a autobiography about who I was and what happened to me, so I can get the word out and let people know that there's a face or a person behind the abuse. It's not just statistics and numbers. And I continue to try to be an advocate for others. I started my own nonprofit called Survivors of the Lion's Den, and I've been doing that on and off for over the past 15 years, trying to make a difference in the world. I've done I've done Carter Entertainment because I wanted to do short films and movies about it when I realized the book avenue wasn't going as to many people as I wanted it to be. My goal is not to be make myself famous or to get a whole lot of attention. It's just to reach people where they at. And if I can do it via books, movies, and I even do a podcast now, as she mentioned, I'm trying to get to the people who need to know that they're not alone any which way I possibly can, because I know what it feels like to be that person locked in a family or a relationship where you feel like you can't breathe, that you need help, and you're always afraid, and you feel almost like a freak because nobody else is going through the same thing you are. But the truth is, they are.
Hmm. So thanks, Charmaine, for reminding us about your journey and all the work that you're doing, and it's not always easy. It's not always easy going through what you went through to find your place, to find your voice, because there are challenges. Not only
Yes.
for you, it was happening in your family, so it was very difficult to actually tell people exactly what was
Yes.
going on, especially when the family was denying it, and let alone finding your place after that. So one thing that I wanted to ask you, because I mean you've been on both sides now. You've been the victim, but now you're kind of helping people. So what are the things that you're focusing on? No, building from your own experience as being abused. What do you focus on to help people?
What I focus on to help people is I focus on community. People feel isolated, especially now with the pandemic. Even makes matters even worse. I want people to feel like even though we're not in your room or we're not able to touch you, we're still a community of survivors, and we're still out here to help each other. I give out helpful information. I actually talk about some of the stuff that happened to me so that people realize that even though we're half a world away or a whole world away, we are still united in the
Mhm.
fact that we are survivors, which means we can do anything.
And that's the important fact, especially when I've not been a victim, but on everything, when you have a challenge in life, you think like you are alone. So you want to solve the problem, or go through the challenge alone. But you realize, especially when you start to open up, you realize that there are other people who actually went through it. And then if you come together, you are stronger. Together you can actually heal, a little bit faster than trying to do it, on your own. And that's an important step. So how did you, obviously, you have done, all the activism, but how did you find your place and your voice? I presume it didn't come, just easy. So what are the key things that actually help you to get, your voice, and to get, this your place, and really look at your abuse as a tool to serve others and to salvage others, heal others? What did you do?
So what helped me was, first of all, excuse me, I actually went to counseling. I went to actual, therapy, sometimes group therapy, to help the, survivors of childhood abuse. I actually got in a group of people who were all similar kind of stories. And in that group, when we finally told our story, even if whether it was the whole thing or just pieces of it, I realized it helped other people. In fact, a lot of times after group was over with, people were, hugging me and telling me thank you for sharing my story, because the same thing happened to them. It affected them. And the fact that I had the courage to actually tell my story was what became a catalyst for them to tell theirs. That actually made me feel good that just sharing my story after being silent for such a long time actually helped people.
Mm-hmm.
That is what got me started on being an activist. And then, like I said, I've always been writing as a kid. One of the assignments they gave us during the group therapy and stuff was to actually write down some of the traumatic events that happened to us. And we didn't have to
Mm-hmm.
share. We just need to write down and get it out of our system. And we could just like make it into a letter. And just once we did that, and we could read it out loud to the rest of the group, or we could just say it to ourselves. We then were allowed to torch the letter, like burn it up, and release it, like release it into the universe.
Mm-hmm.
That felt so good to me, to be able to write down exactly what happened and the emotions and the feelings with it. And well, I didn't like the part of the burning part, but I did like the part of actually writing down my emotions and getting it out. It made it seem, well, I hate saying I make it made it seem real, because my family always told me it was my overactive imagination, like I was crazy. So when I
Mm-hmm.
actually wrote it down and read it and realized it was the same thing I've been saying in my head for years, it was like word for word, then I realized it was not my overactive imagination. It really happened to me. It
Mm-hmm.
became real, real to me. And the fact that that stuff had happened to me and people were trying to make me think I'm crazy irritated me and made me want to keep writing. It made me want
Mm-hmm.
to keep doing that. And so my path to getting better was counseling and writing. Those were my
Mm-hmm.
two paths to getting better. And so even now, I have I guess I call it stepdaughter, who had abuse in her issue, her family as well. And I give her um, butterfly notebooks to
Mm-hmm.
help
Mm-hmm.
her write down her emotions. She's very angry and bitter about everything that's happened to her, and the writing helps. So, to everybody out there, community, the
Mm-hmm.
group thing, the group therapy helps because you see other people like you who are not like you, but who have similar stories that help move you forward. And writing, You don't have to write to anybody else. You don't have to write anything. Just journaling, writing in a diary, whatever. Those things make what you're feeling on paper, and now you realize it's real.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can move forward, because as long as you keep being in denial that anything is happening, or maybe it was my imagination, you can't move forward, because the first step is admitting there's an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't write it down, if you don't talk about it, you are not admitting there's an issue. And you can't heal, you can't move forward. And that's what I did. And that's what helped me be better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I like that, because even in life, you when you have problem, you can't ignore the problem. The best way to to solve the problem is to face it, and it comes down to writing down and understanding the root of the problem and how you can get out of it. And that's an important lesson, not only for your community of people who survive abuse, but also for any person who is in front of a obstacle or in front of a challenge that is very important, and they want to ignore.
Right.
So we're just gonna have a break, and then we will be back and talk a little bit more about this new novel that you will publish very soon.
Yes.
And then for some other subject that are really important to you. So don't go anywhere. We're just gonna have a short break and then come back.
Life After Emotional Abuse by Manipulators. Emotional abuse is one of the most complex types of abuse to identify. Victims of emotional violations cannot be easily detected. Often, emotional abuse happens to its victims in reaction to another's mental or physical actions. Therefore, it's not easy to look at a person and know the person's being abused emotionally. At times, the victim of this abuse doesn't know they're victimized. Before we proceed, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click the notification bell for updates. Manipulators or narcissists are often the personality types that enjoy this emotional blackmailing. They usually do this because they're over-elated self-esteem, making them see themselves as flawless. So the flaws will be pushed to the manipulated victim, and this act often births the abuse. Over time, this blackmailing includes name-calling, gaslighting, or criticisms, and erodes the victim's sense of self. So when dealing with others, they can no longer see themselves realistically and would often allow other people around, who might not even be manipulators, to determine their fate on events they could have presided on. Therefore, even when the abuser has left the victim's life, they consistently agree with the abuser. Then the victim is likely to be trapped in abusive relationships, believing that they'll never be good enough for anyone or anything else. Furthermore, when this feeling of worthlessness goes deep and becomes the victim's mindset, they would likely isolate themselves. They would leave the comfort of their family and friends who cares for them and genuinely loves them to stay a loner. The victim does this not because they often enjoy personal time. Instead, they feel no one likes them and they can't get anything right. While left in isolation after a long relationship with an emotional vampire, the victims are likely to think more than they discuss. So they can't chill or cheer off their pain. Instead, they would reflect and think on their past, trying to understand the reasons behind the series of events that previously happened and what they could have done. And of course, they won't see reasons. And as they do this consecutively, they're likely to develop several health issues like depression, heart palpitation, eating disorders, and insomnia. If they don't get sick as victims of emotional blackmail, they're likely to develop a strong sense of insecurity, fear, or even necessary anger, making them lose things and values their worth. Values like respect. They work at offices and more friends. In conclusion, I'll be stating some likely characteristics of a victim, so you can go for therapy if you are one, or advise a friend passing through such. These characteristics include becoming approval-seeking, people-pleasing, becoming extremely compassionate, developing solid low self-esteem, and developing unnecessary phobias. So if you notice these things seem to be growing in you or any of your close friends or family, do well to check on them to know if they're narcissists. If they are, a therapist would seem helpful. Please let us know your opinions in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell. Thanks for watching this video.
Yeah, so very, a video that is coming, together with what you were explaining. So the therapy is very important, and looking for the sign as well, and have, this community that will, help people to actually talk and then write and then get, the healing process starting. So you obviously, you've been writing, you've been, doing movies, but there's new things coming. So you are working on a graphic novel,
Yes,
and which is based on a character, a girl, if I'm not mistaken.
correct.
So how did this thing came out? And explain to us a little bit the process, and the goals and the mission behind this novel.
Sure. So how did this graphic novel come about? Well, like I said, I'm been writing all my life, and I'm probably never going to stop writing. It's my therapy. It helps me out a lot to get my own issues. And a lot of people think that once you've done counseling and group therapy and all this stuff, and you're got a quote unquote clear bill of health, that you don't need it ever again, and that's not the truth. It took
Mm-hmm.
years for you to be abused, and it's going to take years for you to get through it. But what how this novel came about is kind of my son's sister's fault. I was talking to her, and she loves all these Marvel movies that are coming out, and her father explained to her that there were comics before, so she wanted to go get the comics, to find out about the backstories of these Marvel
Mm-hmm.
movies and stuff. And I was surprised that I was like, I didn't know that people still read comics. I thought everybody
Mm-hmm.
was just, TV and, YouTube and all that stuff. And then she told me that there are comics online and there's
Mm-hmm.
websites for different comics online. And people pay serious money to read these comics and look at these things. And I'm like, really? So young people still read comics. She said, well, yeah, some buy the comics too, but a lot of them, go online and read these comics online. And I'm like, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I said, so maybe I can make a comic to reach out to teenagers and young adults who are, into reading comics. I said, that would be a good idea, but um, I'm not sure what I want to do or how I want to do it. And so I was talking to my daughter, or my son's sister. I keep calling her my daughter because I feel like she's mine too. But I
Mm-hmm.
was talking to her and I was telling her about, I'm thinking about making a comic. And she thought, great. And she had already read my book, and she was like, so is it going to be about abuse, or is it going to be about something else? I was like, no, that's my niche. I talk about, abuse and,
Mm-hmm.
and advocacy and those kinds of things. So that's how I got the idea. Just talking to her and realizing that young people still read comics. I mean, adults
Mm-hmm.
too, but they still read comics. And I had no idea because I stopped reading comics, when I became an adult. I did it when I was a kid, but not as an adult. I didn't realize they still do it. And so that became why I got this idea of making a comic. But I didn't know who the character was going to be. I had no idea. So I'm a woman of God, as you said before. So I prayed on it, and then I slept on it. And when I was asleep, I had this dream of the character and
Mm-hmm.
what she was going through and her own life. And it was almost like I was watching a movie, of the comic book. And I could tell what was supposed to happen next. And it gave me I can't say the whole life, but it gave me a
Wow.
snapshot of what the comic book should be about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how this whole thing became.
Wow. Wow. And it's, and I know that everything happened for a reason. So
Yeah.
this thing just, like you said, came up and you were not even planning it. And
Yeah.
so there's really a purpose here. And so what's gonna be the message that you already have, because obviously now you're targeting a younger, a younger a niche. But what's different? What are the difference that you, for example, with the other books that you had, and how do you see it changing? The life of the children, especially the children that are abused, or are survivors of abuse.
So with this comic, what graphic novel, what I'm trying to do is telling a story using this character. Her name is Miriam from the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling this story of this girl named Miriam who basically seems like she has a perfect life,
Mm-hmm.
well off, good father, a good mother. She actually has a father and mother, unit together. And it seems like everything is just perfect for her. But
Mm-hmm.
that's just the outside appearance. And the reason why I did it that way is because I want people to realize, especially young people, that I understand that from the outside, from society's point of view, you have the perfect little family. There's nothing crazy going on. Y'all pay bills, y'all go to school, church, whatever. That's the outside appearance. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what happens a lot in abusive families. They project this image that everything is fine, everything is wonderful. We're the perfect, little family
Mm-hmm.
with, everybody taking care of each other. And I made sure that was in the story because I know that still happens. But underneath of all that, we have a lot of conflict. We have a lot of control, manipulation. And then we find out on top of all of that, she's not from here.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean she's not from here as in she's not from United States or Africa or whatever. She's not even from this planet.
Mm-hmm.
And she escaped to this planet because of actual physical, sexual incest and abuse at her own planet to come here just to get back into a dysfunctional family.
Mm-hmm.
And I want that story to be told because I want the kids to realize that even when we're talking otherworldly kind of stuff, abuse is not just for the inner city or the rich or the poor or the black or the white or the purple or the green. It's universal.
Mm-hmm.
Abuse is all across the universe. It's not just a planet thing for Earth, for us. It's universal. And I wanted people to realize that, but I'm doing it in a way that is, you know, slow building up of it. And what I
Mm-hmm.
want these kids to realize is that you're not alone. Like I said before, the community, you're not alone. There are other people out here who have the same problems. Even people on other planets have the same kind
Mm-hmm.
of issues we have because abuse is universal. Abuse is all about control. And no
Mm-hmm.
matter what species you are, control is always an issue. So that's what I wanted to make sure that people realize. And that's what I wanted to get out of here. That control is universal. It happens everywhere.
Mm-hmm. 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 And it doesn't get better because what we see, and I think during the pandemic, it's we've seen those numbers of abuse going up, and we see people being stressed, and as and with all the disruption that is happening, they want to have control, and this
Yes,
control sometimes go overboard and become abuse.
yes,
And so it's important to talk about it. It's important to address it, because otherwise, if we keep quiet, it's just gonna escalate and keep happening and happening, and that's not what we want. So what do you think, apart from the work that you are already doing and advocacy is doing, what do you think, the different communities and people in general should do to be able to not only identify, those point of abuse, but also manage it and deal with it. Because I think what's going on is sometimes we identify it, but we don't deal with it. So what are the, based on your own experience and based on, your advocacy and talking to different people, what do you think are the key things that can, help empower not only the communities, but also the individual to do something about it?
And see, and that's why that's why I'm doing the graphic novel, simply because of
Mm-hmm.
that. Because I've seen the stories on TV, I'm sure you have as well,
Mm-hmm.
about how violent these children are now. And
Mm-hmm.
more of these children are pulling out guns, they're shooting each other, they're shooting other people, because, and the society is still trying to figure out what the issue is, what's causing all this violence. The pandemic is quote unquote over, so what's caused all this violence? I'm sitting going, I don't understand how clearly you can't see this. What's
Mm-hmm.
causing the violence, the actual gun violence, is not the fact that kids can get their hands on guns, because they always could get their hands on guns if they were so choose to do so. That's not the issue. And you taking away all the guns in the world, I'm being funny. If you were to take all the guns in the world away, people would still be killing each other and fighting each other using knives, whatever they could get their hands on. It's not the weapon of choice that's causing the issue. It's abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Abuse in the home that has not been addressed and has been not talked about. It's the abuse that's going on with their family, their friends, those kinds of things. And what happened is during the pandemic, when they were isolated, they didn't have any way to quote unquote get off the steam. When you're feeling
Mm-hmm.
abused and oppressed and pushed down and pushed down and pushed down and pushed down, you're like a volcano. The more pressure gets onto you, the more you have to hold it down because you're locked in because of COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and then sooner or later it erupts and it gets all over everywhere. It will kill and take out a whole neighborhood if it needs to. That's the issue with this going on right now, and people are trying to dance around the subject, talk under the subject, talk
Mm-hmm.
over the subject. They're making all these committees, and in no time has anybody even thought about the fact of, well, maybe these children are being abused.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe their household is dysfunctional or terminal, because that would be a deeper issue that they don't want to discuss. That's not
Mm-hmm.
something they want to talk about, and that's what we need. We need a way to discuss about
Mm-hmm.
domestic violence and dysfunctional families and abuse to these younger people. I promise you, you get them talking about stuff that's going on in their household, about
Mm-hmm.
things that had happened to them. You will find a common thread: abuse. It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
all through it. And they are finding different ways of getting their frustration out. Now they got a gun, and anybody who says the wrong thing gets killed, because their feelings have all been compounded. And with the COVID-19, they were locked in the house with their abusers. There was
Mm-hmm.
no escape. There was no calling for help. You're just stuck. And now that they're
Mm-hmm.
actually out, we're dealing with the backlash. But
Yeah.
nobody wants to talk about it. And that's the thing that's going to help these kids. Talking about it, talking about it. That's why I wanted to make the graphic novel, because the graphic novel, even if mom and dad find the graphic novel and pick it up and read it, mom and dad won't get it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because it's
Mm-hmm.
very, between the lines kind of story. However, the kids, because they are dealing with it, they'll read it and identify with it and know what the story is talking about, while mom and dad or whoever the abuser doesn't get it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's the thing, I like that you mentioned the nobody wants to talk about it. I
No.
think as parents, as soon as we say, okay, we give a roof to our children, we pay for their school, we pay for anything, they don't have the right to be, we don't pay attention to how what's going on, and we feel like we can do everything, to them, and that's a key issue that needs to be addressed. And I was wondering, in the education system, I don't know, all the detail in the US. Do you think, having a novel like that as part of the education, the mainstream education system will help us actually to address the problem from an education point of view. Obviously that there's the household that needs to be addressed, but at least have this awareness. Do you think it will help?
Honestly, I'm praying that it will. And because when I wrote my autobiography, we talked about this before, the Black Family Lies autobiography, I was working as a teacher assistant in an at-risk school. And I was writing on notebooks. That's my thing. I know I can type stuff in the system, but writing it down just feels more flowing for me. So I was writing down a notebook as a teacher assistant, and one of the kids stole my notebook because they thought I was writing about them. These kids have already been in and out of jail already, have been in trouble with the law a couple of times. This was their last resort. If they didn't get good grades and finish school, they were going to go into the actual system permanently. And once you get in, it's hard as sin to get out. She stole the notebook. She read it. She made everybody else in the classroom do their work because she was reading. And when she found, and at the end of the class, I let her keep it because she wasn't causing any trouble. In fact, she was making everybody do their work. So there, we were fine with that. At the end of the class, she gave me the notebook and apologized profusely for stealing it. And she truly apologized. And her statement was, the same thing happened to me. That broke my heart. Because, I'm 50 plus. At the time, I was maybe 30, 40 years old. And the fact that it was still going on, in the 21st century, I was just flabbergasted. Back in, in the 70s and 80s is different, different mindset. People didn't know as much. But in the 21st century, everybody knows about abuse. Why was it still going on? And the fact, and after that, every day she came back and wanted to read more and more. She ended up graduating from high school. And she got a job and she didn't get back in trouble anymore. And when I saw her, she was working at a job and she thanked me again. She told me that my kindness, my words, just reading that book helped her out so much. And she said it was wonderful to see somebody who'd been through the same thing I have and wasn't in jail or wasn't in a mental institution or wasn't hooked on drugs. And that's why I think this book would be great for school. And I want to get it into schools because I know how impactful knowing that this is based on a true story or, this kind of stuff actually can make kids realize somebody actually went through this and they're not dead. They didn't kill themselves. They're not on drugs. Those kind of things give them hope. And when you're in an abusive situation or a dysfunctional family, that's the one commodity that is more rare than gold. It's the biggest, baddest jewel that you could possibly have, hope. And these kids have none. Most of them don't think they're going to make it until they are 18 or 21. They think they're going to die as a teenager. They are missing hope. And I want to get this book, this graphic novel to these kids into the school systems so that they can have hope again.
And that's a key thing, hope, especially, we've seen the pandemic and now there's all kind of things going on in Europe and the market crashing and all kind of things. So how do you find hope in all of this? It's really the question. How do we address that? And it's not an easy answer. So we will have a break and we'll come back on this after the break. Okay. So I hope, hopefully, today is a bit quiet, but for those who are going to watch this interview, please, make sure you ask questions and make sure you also grab, when the novel get out, you grab a copy of the novel so that you can, see buy it for your children so that they can read it and they can, even if they're not in an abusive situation, they can help maybe their friends or even, anybody in their community that is going through the abuse. So don't go anywhere. We will continue our conversation after this short break. So we are back. We are back with Charmaine, and we are focusing on how to find your voice and your place after abuse. But we've talked about different things that are related to abuse, and the most important thing, she has a graphic novel coming out called Miriam of I.O., and I encourage you to follow her to know when the novel will be out, and then please gift it to somebody who need who's gonna need the book. So you said, before we got the break, you said that abuse is you were not expecting to see abuse, still going on, nowadays. I mean, it was going on. We went through it in the 70s, and it's still happening, and it looks like it's getting worse. So why do you think, it's still going, and we still can't get rid of? I mean, I call it the pandemic.
Yes.
Get rid of this pandemic. It's just it's quite difficult.
Yeah, and the only reason why it's still, I think it's still being going, it's still going on and still getting worse, is because the pandemic actually made put everything into a perfect storm. That's the best way I can say it, in a perfect storm.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens is now the children, even the adults, are stuck in the house with the abusers. You can't go out to, because I know for me personally, when I was a kid, I loved the after school activities, the church programs, all this kind of stuff, because it got me out of the house, away
Mm-hmm.
from the abuse. So you can't abuse me in public. You can't do that kind of stuff in public because somebody would see. It's a dirty
Mm-hmm.
little secret nobody wants to talk about. So, but when you had the pandemic, all that was cut off. And if you are in, I can't say even impoverished, if you are in a neighborhood or community where you don't have a whole lot of social media kind of things going on, you can't be on the computer like talking about, then you're even at a worse thing because you don't even have, the internet that you could talk to somebody on friends about it. So I think it became a perfect storm where, because of everything going on, you are more able to have that pressure to actually silence people's tongues. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what is going on. The abuse has been going generation after generation and never stopping. And so
Mm-hmm.
the stuff that happened to grandma is happened to mom, is happening to you, is happening to your kids because nobody's talking about it. And so
Mm-hmm.
what has happened is it's a generational thing. If you don't change the mind, it keeps going. You
Mm-hmm.
have to change
Mm-hmm.
your mindset. You have to change your spirituality. You have to learn to grow and move through that kind of stuff. And people don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard. Let me make sure I say this one more time. That's hard work.
Mm-hmm.
Getting help, changing your mindset, working on you is hard work. It's easier just to say, well, it's her fault. And, if she had done this or he hadn't done this, I wouldn't be able to do that. It's easier to blame other people and pass on what happened to you to somebody else than it is to do the hard work and reflect inside and actually
Mm-hmm.
change anything. So I think that's why, yep,
Mm-hmm.
mindset shift. That's exactly it. Mindset shift. And people do not want to change their mindset. They
Mm-hmm.
want to just find a patch job to put it on top of it. And it's easier to blame somebody else than to change.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's a key point that you made. It's easier to blame somebody else than taking responsibility, because at the end, the healing process starts with you. Yes, you've been abused. Yes, there've been, it's been unfair. But what you can, the only thing you can do is focus on you, because that's the only person that you can control the abuser. You can't control people who are not believing in that you've been abused. The only person that you can control is you, and this mindset that this mind that you have, and how do you use it to help you to get into a better position, and really continue to have a normal life, if you can have a normal life, or
Right.
redefine yourself, as people say, redefine your life, redefine yourself. keep, to keep going and start functioning like a normal human being again,
Yes.
and in a way not forget but forgive and move forward. And that's my question, is that, do you really forgive, your the perpetrators? How is the process after the abuse? Is it something that come easy, or is it something that came, as a result of the help that you had from, from other people?
So the truth of the matter is, yes, I've forgiven my family and other people who abused me throughout the years or used me. I've forgiven them. And actually, in my podcast called Surviving the Lion's Den, I talked about that in one of my episodes. It's the least listened to episode of all of my
Hmm.
15 episodes, is the least listened to. Why? Because forgiveness is hard. And people
Hmm.
don't want to forgive the abuser. They want them punished. They want justice. And I understand. I believe me, I've been there. I understand completely. Which is why I've know people who are still, they refuse to forgive the abuser. And I
Hmm.
do not judge them. I understand why you don't want to do it. I didn't want to do it at the time when I was at your stage too. I didn't want to do it. But forgiveness is never about the abuser, it's about
Hmm.
you. Forgiveness is all about you letting go of the hurt and the pain and the vengeance. Because what happens with revenge, it's like drinking poison,
Hmm.
that you made this whole glass of poison to give to your abuser and you ended up drinking it. It does nothing but kill you, because you,
Hmm.
what you're doing is, you, yes, it's all about you. And what happens is you're doing this and you're mad at them, and you're, I want them to die, I want them to this, I want them to be punished. And what happens is it makes you more and more bitter,
Hmm.
and it makes you more and more angry every time you think about it, every time you hear about it. And it affects you spiritually and it affects you physically. It makes a difference. And forgiveness
Hmm.
is a hard thing to do, but you have to do it. I had to literally, I talked to my family, told them I forgive them, and they basically blew up in my face. They had no idea what I was talking about. I was being dramatic, the whole 9 yards. But when I walked away from them, I felt better.
Hmm.
I felt better because I was like, okay, I said I'll forgive you. You don't accept it. That's fine. But it wasn't about you in the first place. It was about me. And so when I
Hmm.
walked away, I felt like this 10-ton weight had been lifted off of my chest. And I can
Hmm.
now move forward. And that's another thing. When you don't forgive, you're stuck in that
Hmm.
abuse. And you play it over and over and over again. You can never move forward if you're still stuck in your past.
Hmm. 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 And that's just the powerful lesson, is that, as soon as you don't release this bad energy, you're stuck.
Yes.
You can't move forward. And that's where, you have to think about this forgiveness to get rid of this burden.
Yes.
And then, take, and enlighten you, and then bring more, something more positive into yourself. Wow,
Yeah, because, and I hate to cut
that's
across you.
very and I hope that people understand that, especially people who went through abuse, or are going through abuse. And one question that I always ask myself, because we see a lot of people work on, help, the survivor. But what about the abuser? I mean, they're sick in a way.
Yes,
So
they
they're
are.
sick. So how do we help them so that they don't continue to perpetrate what they're doing and destroying other people's life? Have you thought about it, or have you come across, people who are actually helping those abuser, and how is it going?
So I personally years ago made a monologue basically talking about the abuse that happened to me. And I went into the prison systems talking
Mm-hmm.
to men who were in jail for abuse,
Mm-hmm.
whether it was abusing their spouse, their children, whatever. And I talked about it from the victim's point of view to them, which of
Mm-hmm.
course, when they are the abuser, they don't see the victim's point of view because they don't see what they're doing is long lasting. They got upset, they
Mm-hmm.
lost their temper, XYZ happens. And that's how their mindset works. I actually talked to the perpetrators and I did my little monologue for them for it was an experiment and it actually worked very well. I need to get more funding or whatever to do it again because I think it worked well. And what
Mm-hmm.
happened is the fact that these abusers did not realize that what they had done to people affected them 5, 10, 20 years later. They
Mm-hmm.
had no clue. From their point of view, they lashed out, they made mistakes, and now they're in jail paying for it, and that's the end.
Mm-hmm.
No one has ever
Wow.
talked to them about how the victim actually felt when you did all this stuff, how your daughter felt when you did all this, whether you hit her or not, how she saw you beating up on mom or whatever, and now they have issues, they have depression, they've gotten into abusive relationships with bad people, they have low self-esteem, all these kinds of trauma that's happened to them.
Mm-hmm.
The perpetrators had no clue. So yes, they get anger management in the middle, and when they're in prison or whatever. They get anger management. They get counseling, but no one actually tells them the
Mm-hmm.
long term effects of what happened to these people. Now, telling them versus from a therapist point of view or maybe even the prisons thing is one thing. To actually have a real live victim or
Mm-hmm.
survivor of abuse talk to you immensely affected them. I even had one guy after I finished my little program come up to me afterwards and said, I think my daughter is in an abusive relationship. How would I know?
Mm-hmm.
Because he actually did care about his daughter. He didn't want his
Mm-hmm.
daughter to be in an abusive relationship, but he had never known about the strings, the little,
Mm-hmm.
the attached what happens when you see these kinds of things. No one had ever talked to him about it. And
Mm-hmm.
so he was absolutely genuinely concerned. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I think it will help out these perpetrators. Not so the system is great, but when you're talking to a psychiatrist or a therapist or even a social worker about domestic violence or abuse, versus actually having a real life person who's been there and gone through it and gone on the other side, it's a huge difference. It's a
Mm-hmm.
huge, huge difference. And it does make a difference to the perpetrator
Yeah.
most of the
Yeah.
time.
Mm-hmm. Most of the time, yeah, because I can imagine it's something profound, and like you were saying, it's sometimes it's coming from generation and generation.
Right.
Those are bondages that they've been carrying from one, generation from another, and for them, it's basically normal now. It's
Right.
like there it's second nature basically for them to just abuse other people, abuse their children, abuse
Mm-hmm.
women, abuse men, whoever. So it's really a difficult thing to break those
Yep.
strongholds that not only you have to realize that this is it, but then break it. It's another level. So we're getting close to the end. It has been, as usual, a pleasure to have you and have those deep conversation, and sometimes confronting, because when we listen to everything that you said, it's a very harsh word out there,
It is.
and you have to be strong, you have to get the support, and like you said, the community has to be involved, because on your own it's almost impossible, it's very difficult to do anything. But before we leave today, is there a particular message that you want to leave the audience with, anybody who's listening today?
Yes, my message to anybody who's listening today is that first of all, you're not alone. Um, Even though the abuser, the perpetrator, is making you believe that you don't have anybody, you only have me. I'm the only person you can depend on. It's a lie. It's a lie. It is a lie. You are stronger than you think you are. You're a survivor. Even if you're still in the middle of the abuse, you're still surviving. So you're a survivor. And we survivors are a whole lot stronger than the abusers trying to give us credit with. And that's the reason why they want you to keep silent. They don't want you to tell anybody because they know how strong you are. And they're trying to beat you down and control you because they know that you are a whole lot stronger than they ever will be. So please, I have a website called Survivors of the Lion's Den. I also am on Facebook. I have a group called Surviving the Lion's Den. Please join. Please talk to us. There are so much more resources out there. You are not alone. And don't believe the lies that the abuser is telling you. You are strong and smart, and you have so much light inside of you. And they're trying to beat it out, and they can't. Don't allow them to. We are here. I am here. I know what it feels like to be trapped in the dark and being abused. You don't have to stay in the dark anymore. You can come out to the light where the rest of us are, and we will help you.
Powerful, powerful. So, if you've listened to this last message, please make sure you connect with Charmaine. Make sure you join our group, especially if you need it. Don't try to manage abuse or any a type of trauma alone. There's a community that Charmaine have created. So, join the community, and just release, all this bitter energy, all this, energy, negative energy that keep you stuck, and give yourself a chance to move forward and to start to enjoy, the best part of yourself. Because as she was saying, the perpetrator want to keep you in jail. They want to keep you in jail so that you don't have any life anymore. But you're not. You're strong, and you can do it. And with the community, it is gonna happen. You're gonna go through it. So Sherman, for the tremendous work that you're doing to support, the survivors of abuse, but also helping the community, because at the end of the day, you're helping the community. Because if we have only wounded people in a community, it's just not good.
Yeah.
The community will not grow, the community will not thrive. So it's important that we help, those who are traumatized, so that they can be functioning well in community. So thank you so much, and it has been a pleasure as usual to have you. And I'm always, looking at the work that you're doing, and looking forward to have my copy of Miriam High O, and share with, people who need in my community, and also talk to them, if there's a need. So thank you so much. Have a
Thank you.
great day,
You too.
and again, thank you for everything that you do.
My pleasure. You have a wonderful day too.
Thank you.